So we're going to talk a little bit about creativity in education, but also kind of cover apps and what it means to build a creative app and put it out in the market and kind of thrive. A lot of times I feel like we get into, yeah, it is warm, I just realized that myself. Do this. No. You know, you get into a lot of these conferences and everybody, like, you know, you get an opportunity to talk about your app and everyone's really interested in that, but I feel like it's also really interesting to talk about your path to the app and what happens after the app and where your core, you know, goals are and how you expand and learn, because we're all here not only to learn from one another and make connections, but also, you know, to not reinvent the wheel. My name is Izzy Nice. Yes, I know that sounds like a question. I get it all the time. It's not my fault. I live with it. I work for Metaverse Mod Squad, which is kind of your anything to do with the audience vendor. We do customer service, community moderation, social media, consulting on anything to help you avoid the fail whale, or at least tell you about the fail whale. So we're kind of your catch-all for your audience. I specialize in family. I specialize in kids, particularly virtual worlds, apps, behavior management, because that is something no one ever talks about. So that's my spiel. But in past lives, I was a teacher. I started out as a teacher, and I hated it, but that was another story. It had nothing to do with kids, had nothing to do with the adventures of learning, which is what these fine folks are focusing on, the adventures in learning. Had a lot to do with the government and parents and yada, 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 which we can talk about over a coffee or an adult beverage some other time if you would like to. So moving on to our fine panel here, we have Yuval. Yuval, would you like to share a little bit about your background?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Get up in there. Just get up right in there.
I'm Yuval from JoyTunes. And at JoyTunes, what we started thinking about is how cool it would have been if a rock band, for example, would have been activated by real instruments, right? How absolutely amazing it was, how many musicians we would have had if it wasn't just plastic and, you know, make-believe instruments, but actually real music. And that's where, that's our starting point. We do, in its basic form, it's like Rock Band, but with two main differences. First, it's activated with real instruments, acoustic instrument. So we identify sounds being played by the microphone, through the microphone. And the second, that it's built in a way which is a lot of fun. It's very gamified, but it also has the end goal of teaching. So we're kind of a gaming studio, but we're not a gaming studio. Gaming is used as a tool. So it's a very classic gamification problem. We have roughly 2 million downloads, very, very high retention and engagement rates. So it's going very well. Many awards, industry awards, Parents' Choice, an award from the United Nations, EMI Innovation Challenge, so a lot of that going. Several thousand registered teachers using it actively in music, when they teach music. And kind of, I'd say that if I'm looking forward, the end goal, and we're actually already achieving it to some extent, is kind of to remove from this world arguments between parents and kids over practicing musical instruments. So no more arguments.
Can you go back to the 80s and help me out with piano? Because that would be awesome.
Yeah, so the apps that we have out are for piano. That's the first. We have for recorder, kind of a very proof of concept that is used extensively in schools, actually, by general music teachers. And then we have for piano, so just imagine you take your iPad and you put it on your, it doesn't matter keyboard or piano, but it's just a better image of the piano, on the piano, and you play the piano and it's activating a game inside according to what you play. So it's really a lot of fun.
Awesome.
It's
cool. Jacob Klein, from co-founder of MotionMath.
Hello. Yes, our company is MotionMath. We're taking the most challenging concepts in elementary school math and turning them into delightful mobile games. So we have a 7-game suite now on iOS covering the thorniest stumbling blocks for kids: fractions, estimation, operations, the number line, the concept of multiplication, and a few games on Android as well. And we really are inspired by three main sources. One is the learning literature. So the company started as our master's project at the Stanford School of Education, and there's a lot of experts that know a lot about how kids learn math, and including someone in this audience. We really want to draw on that. We also look at gameplay. What are the game loops that really get kids excited, get them in that special kind of concentration that that intense gameplay evokes? It's very different from the attention you have on a tough test. What are those game loops and play patterns that we can use? And then the last is really looking at this new technology of mobile touchscreens that have an accelerometer that can be passed around very easily from person to person. So there's a social component that's available now that isn't really there with a laptop, let alone flashcards or a board game. So looking at learning literature, play patterns, and the physicality of these new devices, all three of those inspire our design process.
Cool. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jessica.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Lindell. I'm the general manager of Glass Lab, and we're a project of the Institute of Play. So our focus is on bridging the engagement gap. As you guys probably know, we've got 98% of kids today who are playing video games outside of the classroom, and they walk into the classroom and we basically strip them of all of these tools and engagement factors that they're using. It's not just for kids though, we're also focusing on teachers and bridging their engagement gap. So really providing teachers that immediate, instantaneous feedback on how their kids are doing. And then for parents, how do we better engage them in the learning trajectory of their kids? So we do this with a series of partners. We've got a lot of friends who are helping us with this work. We've got Electronic Arts and the Entertainment Software Association who are providing for us game IP, office space experts. And then on the other side of the equation, we have Pearson and ETS who are providing the learning and assessment experts to bring this work to life.
Awesome. All right, and then Laura Feeney, you're up.
Hi everyone, it's great to be here this afternoon. I'm the education advocate at Adobe. I'm guessing in this crowd I might not need to explain what Adobe is too much. But suffice it to say we're a creative software company, although we also go way into e-learning, digital publishing, web design. I mean, everyone probably knows what Photoshop is because it is a verb in the dictionary. So, so I don't think I need to go into that too much. But I'm part of the education programs team, and what we are tasked with doing is inspiring and engaging educators around the world in using our software and teaching creativity in the K-12 and higher education space. I specifically am focusing on K-12, which means I get to meet with tons of educators around the world who are doing incredible things, who are really on the cutting edge of creativity and instruction and pedagogy, and whose students are creating absolutely mind-blowing pieces of student work that I think probably not people in this room, but many adults wouldn't really expect children and young people to be creating. The quality of work is mind-blowing. So we're really interested in creativity. We are a creative software company, and we believe really strongly that creativity is not an elective, it is the future. This is for a whole host of reasons. It's not just the new economy, although that is certainly a really big element of it. We know that we don't even know what the largest professions and the biggest trends will be in 20 years. I mean, we've seen that with Facebook and with the internet, of course. But I think for me, the bottom line is if we teach today as we were teaching yesterday, we're not preparing our students or really our society for the future. So my team, we have a number of different ways that we're supporting our educators. I'm sort of the boots on the ground, getting the stories, figuring out where are these cutting edge teachers and these amazing students so that they can tell us what is happening out there. But then we also have something called the Adobe Education Exchange, which has 100,000 registered users on it. It's an online community for resource sharing, for professional development, for discussion boards. I think we actually literally got our 100,000th member last week. There's about, I think, 6,000 resources that are free there online, ranging from lesson plans to entire year-long plans to units. And it's totally free for any educator to sign up and join. We've got people from all around the world joining and participating in that community. We've got a program called the Adobe Education Leader Program, which is the sort of cream of the crop educators who are teaching creativity in their classrooms and using Adobe software in ways that are just pushing the boundaries and pushing the envelope constantly. And those folks are writing books and blogging and writing articles and teaching in all different places around the world, and just informing us what is possible and keeping us tapped into what is possible, because it constantly evolves and is impressing us.
So I know you're on Twitter. Is it possible that you can share some of those people and locations from the web with people? Because I know focus testing or just learning, I feel like I'd probably stalk your Twitter account just for that.
I did see a little retweet about 40 minutes ago.
Well, I was on that.
I was like, wait, she's in this session too.
Yeah, I love Twitter.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So as you can see here, we have like 4 different perspective additions to kind of the edu gaming atmosphere, but all with common goals. And I think that's what's really cool about you 4 on this panel. Innovation for a product, it starts in the beginning in the planning. It starts from someone like the little sparkle in someone's eye, and it goes through multiple teams in multiple iterations. It goes into focus testing. It changes direction. It goes all over the place, and that's just to get make a product to help other people be creative. So the development process is huge. I kind of want to cover a little bit about not only the development process, but also how you guys are pushing your apps, your games, or your initiatives forward. Jessica, so when you're developing, or you were developing the SimCity EDU project, right?
Yep.
You're utilizing an established brand that already exists, The Sims, which it's very well known. It's got backing from EA. You want to move it towards an educational route. How do you see your team creatively altering that formula? And where do you want to take creativity and education within the SimCity app?
Sure, thank you. So just to clarify, we're, the IP that EA has donated to us first is the SimCity IP. So how many people have played SimCity in the audience? Wow, oh my gosh. How many people have played the new SimCity that came out in March? Okay, so that is a great data point. So let's talk about that. So one of the key opportunities that we saw in the new SimCity, which is mind-blowing if you've played any of the older versions, is just how incredibly rich the experience is for the player. So when you think about the team that we put together, who's focusing on creating this SimCity EDU version, we've got obviously the game designers, the artists, but we also have these assessment and learning designers who have no idea what the game designers are talking about and vice versa. And so initially that was a little challenging in looking at that vocabulary translation and trying to get people all on the same page and focusing on the player and what that experience was. But that actually has turned into an incredibly rich asset for us, that all of us are looking at this challenge and this opportunity through different lenses. So when you think about the SimCity game, which the new game is about 300 hours of gameplay and creativity, that obviously doesn't fit well in a classroom experience or in an at-home learning experience. So what we had to think about was, at its essence, what is the soul of the game, of the SimCity game? So for everyone who's played it before, what you start to realize is that the real teaching and learning behind SimCity is that everything is interconnected. That there are these systems that are really dependent on each other, and if you make a change in one system, it's going to change 3 or 4 systems down the road. And you have to really think about, from a creativity perspective, why that's happening. And so attributes and skill sets like systems thinking, problem solving, and critical thinking are what we really try to focus the game on for middle school kids. So when we think about this whole world of creativity, which I think Laura did a great job of explaining, how do we prepare our kids for jobs that don't exist in the future? Skill sets like problem solving and critical thinking are really at their essence those skills that are going to make our kids successful going forward.
Awesome. I'm an ADD kid, so that's the whole rhyme reason I got anywhere in life, is creatively making things up to get forward. Jacob, we talk a bit about education and fun. And often those things are considered kind of opposing forces, at least if you talk to an 8-year-old. When I remember playing games in the classroom, I remember Math Blasters, and I really remember Math Blasters because my mom made me do that repetitively all the time, and it was one of the few opportunities out there. Whereas now you have a suite of games with a variety of options instead of just kind of shooting multiplication problems. I lost my train of thought. And, okay, so today there are many more options for gaming. How do you see your team breathing in creativity and new opportunity to the industry with your suite? What started the spark for you to create these different games?
Yeah, good questions. Well, if you think about the best teacher you've ever had, they almost certainly love their subject matter, right? And that came through, their passion for the subject matter. And I think it's the same is true with digital experiences, is that it starts with a love of the material, and that should come through in all aspects of the design and the production, that this is important, this is cool, this is interesting to learn, and that's why we're making an amazing experience around it, is because the subject matter is great. I think a lot of educational tools start from an opposite perspective, actually, which is, this is boring, you gotta get through it, so at least I'm gonna give you some fun graphics and a little bit of fun on top, because man, this is just a beast to get through, but good luck, kid. That's where a lot of the design comes from, and you see that in the design of a lot of games, which are basically poor production value versions of popular games, and then you're running through a castle, you're collecting coins, and then stop! Solve these math problems with a calculator. Oh, you got that one wrong. I'm not going to tell you why, but it's wrong. Okay, that one's right, wrong, right, right. Okay, now you can keep playing the fun game, keep playing the fun game, stop. So, why am I playing this game when I could just play the other game that has better graphics and doesn't stop me every 3 minutes to do math problems? Also, why am I doing math? What does math have to do with running through a castle to get the coins, right? The math becomes a obstacle and not a tool in the game. So I think the ideal is really, it's a lot harder, but it's creating experiences where the fun and the education are not opposed, but really merge together, and the learning is the experience. The learning is the actual game loop, and learning the math is the point of the game, not the obstacle to the game. That's the goal. Now that said, Math Blaster, classic game. A lot of people love it. It's still around. I mean, that's an institution, and it kind of fits that other model, right? What does solving the math equations have to do with flying through space? Not a lot. So there's this kind of theoretical ideal that we chase that we found to be very helpful, but for kids sometimes the fun graphics is enough. I think though that's long term, that's not a good way to kind of get kids excited about math.
Tricking kids, yeah. It only works for a short amount of time.
It's a short amount of time. Also, it's basically operations fluency, which is good, and it's important to have that as a foundation. But when you're thinking about really seeing the beauty of math and exploring and higher level thinking, that's hard to do when it's just disconnected from the game loop. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, for some kids, they've had bad experiences. Fun is the opposite of education, but I doubt that it's the opposite of learning. I do think learning is inherently fun and enjoyable and empowering to everyone, adults and kids. Who doesn't like learning something new? So if you reframe it that way and really love the subject matter that you're trying to teach, I think that can create good products.
I love that. Repositioning it. It's helping to change for a positive attitude. I like that a lot. Yuval, depth of content. So, you know, you talked a little bit about how playing the piano, you're making a game similar to Rock Band, right? Which I wish to God that I had. It would have made a lot of my youth a lot easier because I hate piano. It would have made typing a lot easier because it's all that. How do you see building a game like that continue content? How are you positioning your product so that it's not just winning one game, it's going and going and going and mastering, you know, the art of piano?
Yeah, so I think when we look at depth, we kind of look at several things. So there's the easiest is content, right? And for that, I don't need to invent anything, right? I have really popular singers doing that all the time.
Yeah, that's fair.
And the best thing about it that is there's a really huge marketing machine around that gets all these new cool songs to be really popular. So I just need to add them in. And one thing, when you ask kids what is the thing that they hate the most about when they learn to play an instrument, that they don't get to play the things that they want to play. Either that they're at a very early level, a very beginner, so they can't, or that they have a teacher or by themselves that just gives them over and over classical music or folk music that they want more. Which I love classical music and there are very, very beautiful pieces there, but they want to play the things that they know. So that's one thing. And so for that, it's just creating a framework which is very easy to add. It's not, I don't need to send updates to the App Store. I don't need any special development. I have a team of musicians that can roll out new songs kind of by the hour. Mm-hmm. So it's very easy. And the next step after that is actually having people add their own content, which we don't have that yet. So that's one way to go. And but also kind of referring to what Jacob mentioned is when I look at a musical experience, I break down the skills needed. And then another form of depth is to go into the skills. I am working on, sheet music, right? Reading notes and coordination and rhythm and theory and things like that. And now let's progress into that. And you can use the help, again, like Jacob mentioned, you can use the help of the gaming dynamics that go along with that. I can make your coordination skill, I can make that a challenge. Let's see if you can get to rank 21 in coordination skills. And once it's a challenge, it's suddenly, I don't need to detach it from the experience in the app. I can make it as a goal, as an achievement, and then it's, that I'm psyched to do that, to get to that point.
What I find interesting is you're looking at your app as an opportunity, not just to put it out, have it launch, and see it go, sustain, but you are, you're actively improving and actively growing.
The app is a living organism. That's why I often, for some people it works, but I don't believe in using outsource developers or a studio to develop. Everyone's in mobile. I want someone to do a mobile app for me, and then you can't update it. You can't. You don't use analytics right. You can't. So everything related to the app is in-house, and if you had seen the app 6 months ago and how it is now, you wouldn't recognize it. Not only in terms of content, which don't even require updates, but everything. The flow of things, the difficulties, adding mini games, everything changes all the time.
Here's an odd question for you guys, kind of off what we talked about previously. How many people are on your teams now? Like, how many people would you say have assisted in the development of your app?
So we're 11 now. Hiring a couple of others, but
there's no right or wrong, because there's been some fantastic apps made by 2 people in a room. I always find it interesting for others to realize that sometimes it takes a village, and sometimes it's one hermit who lives in a very small hole. Not that that's a bad thing, because I'm not that far off myself.
Side thing. So we're 10 now, but the core of the app, we doubled in size in the last 3 months. So
that's amazing. Yeah.
So it's like, I'd say 5 people developed that.
So you doubled in size after launch.
Yeah. That's
awesome, because in gaming, they go from triple to 1/5 after launch.
Not anymore.
Some MMO gaming companies. Wah, wah. Jacob, what about you?
We're 5 and a few interns, and then we have
God bless the interns.
really talented contract artists and sound designers that we do.
Awesome. Awesome. Dare I ask? Well, how many with you guys?
So I think it's important to, so we've got the SimCity game. We're now working on a tablet game with NASA. So we've got a second game in parallel, and then a platform as well that underlies all of the work that feeds the assessment engine. So we've got 11 full-time, hiring a couple more, and then about 15 kind of part-time people from our various partners who are supporting us.
Awesome. So kind of changing gears here. I always like it when I hear hiring more. That's always a lovely thing in the gaming industry, especially with kids and education. Kind of switching topics here to tech-savvy kids. We've kind of touched on it briefly earlier, and then I took us off on another tangent. So we know they're here to stay. Kids are smart. They're almost evilly smart. Trust me, I work with them in behavior management. I read their chat logs. How do you see teachers addressing, Laura, how do you see them addressing the super savvy to the point of mad genius? How do you see them growing and adapting with that?
Yeah, I would say that the most effective teachers that I encounter really understand, as I said earlier, that creativity is not an elective, it is the future. And I think what that means in practice is that our most effective teachers are really working to redefine what teaching is. And actually some of the things that Jacob was saying and Yuval were saying was reminding me of this. They're moving away from that sort of old schoolhouse image we all have of like the teacher lecturing up front and the students passively or maybe pretending to take notes or doodling in their notebooks. And people are moving away from that model for some really good reasons. So they're not the sage on the stage anymore who are the complete experts in their content area. They probably still are if they're an English teacher. But now they're more a guide on the side. So I've got a really incredible colleague outside of San Diego who is a digital media teacher, and he talks about how he broke his curriculum a couple years ago. And what he meant by that was he just kind of threw out everything he had been doing for almost a full career's worth of teaching and said, you know what, I need to start over. Like, this is not working for me, it's not working for my kids, it's not preparing them for who knows what. And so he created a gamified classroom out of his digital media. So he said he got a couple kids together, they designed a gamified web platform for the classroom where students come in every day, they log into their game, and they find out what challenges they need to try to overcome that day. And they get points for doing that. And the teachers there supporting all along the way, but he's not really doing those lectures that he used to be doing. Instead, he's got hundreds of tutorials on YouTube. It's totally personalized. When a kid knows it or needs to know it, they go onto YouTube, they click on his YouTube tutorial, they learn the skill, and then they move on. Maybe their neighbor is looking at a different tutorial. So the most effective educators that I'm encountering are working the best with kids, with these tech-savvy kids, by realizing that they don't have all the knowledge in the world. And even with Adobe, I mean, Adobe is industry standard software. Adults will tell you most often, probably not everyone in this room, but my mom will probably not be using our software anytime soon. She's afraid of breaking it. Kids today are not afraid of breaking things. They are pushing things to the limit. And this teacher I'm thinking about, he was a graphic designer for about a decade before he went into teaching. He knows his stuff. He knows graphic design. He knows our software. But he also knows enough to know that he doesn't know it all. And I think that's a critical difference. He knows enough to be proficient and comfortable, but he also realizes that if he just holds on to what he knows and bases his teaching on that, he's going to hold his kids back. So he's really giving them the autonomy to fly. And he says, they teach me new stuff all the time. And I think that that's really critical about teachers needing to redefine what teaching looks like, and it's not about them up front lecturing anymore. I
think that's exactly right. I have a lot of friends in the Midwest that are teachers. And the biggest thing that I run into, and it's almost kind of a call to action for all of you guys who have investment in teachers, really embracing technology, is that they're afraid. They don't, I have friends that are afraid of Edmodo, which is made for them, or SchoolTube. There's so many different opportunities to embrace digital atmospheres and use them in their education. But teachers are petrified because they don't know and their students do, and they don't want to have egg on their face, or they don't want to break it, or they don't want to get in legal trouble like whitehouse.com, all of it, which don't go to, by the way. Don't go to that.
So I think there is a balance, though, that I've seen you strike really effectively. And we have a similar setting where at Institute of Play we have the Quest to Learn schools, which are game-based schools. And we've got those types of teachers who have relinquished themselves from stage on the stage. Mm-hmm. But I think the caution that we all face, and Jacob and I were just talking about this before this session, was that you don't want to design just for those teachers. Right. You've got to really create a supportive, nurturing environment for those teachers who aren't there yet, and provide the lesson plans and the curriculum and the tutorials that they still think they need, even though they never use them. so that they can then kind of jump into that progression ultimately.
How are you guys, as kind of like a grab-all question, how are you guys approaching assessment with your apps, like, or your games, or whatever you have? How are you approaching the after-learning, like showcasing knowledge? Is that something that you're doing now, that you're looking to do, teacher side projects with?
So our whole grant was actually not about gaming, it was about assessment. That was the clear focus, was how are we redefining formative assessment so that it's focused on the application of skill as opposed to just the rote learning side of it. So it's very heavy-handed, I think, in the assessment side. And we have the Stanford Research Institute is actually monitoring our assessments to just try and determine that they're as reliable and credible as the high-stakes assessments. So I think that is, at this point in time in the marketplace, probably overkill on what the teachers are demanding and what they're looking for. But I think what they are, absolutely, what we're learning is that they're seeing the value in this just-in-time, real-time data that they can trust, that's providing skills that are more assessment, or more application-driven versus just the regurgitation of the multiplication in your castle game analogy. Yeah.
What about parents? What are you guys doing about the educational element of parents? Are you marketing your products to them at all, or is it specifically kind of open education for everybody who wants to grab it? How are you approaching the parental units?
Well, we've been marketing to both parents and teachers from the beginning. We're shifting more now towards schools and school integration, as many districts, most notably LA Unified, have massive tablet deployment in schools, iPad being the leader, and some other notable competitors including Amplify and Android and Google Education as well. Just on the notion of assessment, first of all, thank you for doing overkill on it, because I think that's what we need.
That's why we're a nonprofit.
That's why you're nonprofit. Cool. We think about assessment in a few different ways. First of all, you can do a lot of assessment with really smart play testing by asking the right questions right there while you're testing the game. Mostly play testing is about, is it intuitive to use and is it engaging? But you can also start to ask a kid, why did that number come up? Why, in my case, why did that number come up? Why didn't you go further in that game? And oftentimes, in the early stage, they're not connecting the math concept necessarily to what you've created. So you can start to get a sense of, is this going to transfer outside of this game experience to math applications outside, which is really the underlying question of assessment. Does the knowledge transfer to other environments? We also did an efficacy study, first efficacy study on an iPad app for our fractions game, which was formal and published and took a while, but was useful to do. And then we're starting to collect a lot of data, and the Common Core is just a great opportunity for us now as a smaller company to start to think about really rigorously aligning those standards. It would have been impossible with the state standards for us to even think about doing that.
Indeed.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
So actually, it was interesting. In the last session, this question came up of marketing, and I think Diana from Amplify was talking about how education is a relationship market, and we at Adobe really understand that. So we've got, I'm not at all affiliated with our sales team, which is a good thing for me, because I'm a former education and not just educator, and I wouldn't be good at that job. Let's just say. But so we've got our sales team, and they're doing those meetings with the state leaders and the governments and et cetera, et cetera. But then Karina from Brain Pop in the last session was also talking about how education is at the same time a bottom-up market as well. And what we're trying to do at Adobe is we've got our salespeople who are targeting those sort of administrative leaders, the people who are going to actually write that check. But with the education programs team, the work we're doing, we're trying to get that bottom-up kind of upswelling. We want people to say, we want Adobe, and we also know that we'll be able to use it because of all these things that they have in place for us. So just kind of wanted to throw that in there as well. I realize that I'm a pretty unique case coming from a company with 5,000 employees worldwide, but I sometimes worry about thinking of it either as a bottom-up or a top-down model. I feel like teachers are really vocal when they're really passionate about things, and at the same time, district administrators are going to write that check or not write. So it's hard to ignore one or the other. So just thought.
Did you have a question?
Yeah. I'm going to just follow up on what you were saying on playtesting and bottom-up approach. specifically working with kids, I'm wondering if you've gone maybe a level beyond playtesting, where you actually have kids helping you in the design of the apps. They're more consistently giving input. They're even part of your design team, embedded in some sense. I'm wondering how that works for you, if it works that way at all.
Usually kids' suggestions, direct suggestions, we don't find are super useful. They're not game designers. So it's more observation. It's more about closely observing what do they want to do, where's their interest, what are they not understanding, and designing for that. Sometimes, absolutely you want to just say, what would you most want to do? Customize the bird or fly a new place and kind of gauge it. But in terms of, saying what could we do to make this game, more closely, teach the concept of the number line, a fourth grader's not going to be able to help you at that level.
But I think it changes at the middle school level.
Yeah.
So for us, we have a youth council that are actually pretty amazing at helping us design the games. And then we've taken it a step further. So that's obviously unpaid and just something that they really enjoy doing. But then we found a couple of high school kids who have won game design competitions. So we actually have 2 of them who are working part-time for us right now. Very part-time. I've looked into the laws. Putting a number of hours. But it's been, just those two voices, those 2 types of voices coming in have just been invaluable for us.
We've had, in previous projects that I've had, we've had board of directors that are kids that come in and they give you feedback, they review everything, they tell you what they like, what they don't like. And there's always 2 perspectives you have to take. One, you have to listen to how can they be successful in the goals that you're presenting them. So if they're telling you how they can be successful, that's something for you to analyze. If they're telling you they like sharks and cookies and monkeys and they want to win $1 bajillion, that's great. That's not feedback that's going to help you at all. And what I've actually encountered is sometimes you have lovely CEOs walking through while you're kid testing and you hear that they like trains and volcanoes for little girls that are dancing. Like it's a game about superhero girls dancing and trains and volcanoes are great for licensing. No. Buzzwords, avoid pivoting. Avoid pivoting based on focus testing feedback. The only reason why you should ever pivot your direction of your creative content is because the end user cannot be successful in the path that you've presented them.
I want to, as opposed to maybe more lines what you said, we actually had kids very helpful in the design process. So I wouldn't say in the hardcore, deep game design documents. They weren't, they're not going to send us game design documents. But if I give, we're using kids all the time to kind of give them the context. This is the problem. This is what I'm trying to do in their own, translate it to their own words. I'm working on engagement. I want you and your kid think about your friends. Think about your friends. What do you think we need to do to get them to enter the app, this and that, or practice more this type of music and stuff like that. And we actually found them very insightful. My nephews in particular, 8-year-olds, 7, 8, and 10, who were we had we have regular brainstorms, and we use external kids to work with us.
One thing I think to be careful of too is asking a kid how fun it is, because they're an adult or a group of adults is paying very close attention to them. Yeah. They're at the center of attention. That experience itself might be fun. They may not want to hurt your feelings. Yeah. I think setting up, we've found a lot of success recently with the kickball test, which is we'll bring gaps to not the school but after school programs. And so the choice isn't, do I want to do this or go back to my normal math worksheet? It's, do I want to keep playing this app or go play kickball with all my friends 10 feet away?
That's brilliant.
And if you can sustain that week after week with the same kids coming back and they still want to play it, then you're starting to, you're cooking with fire.
Do you have leaderboards in there? Are you using leaderboards for, yeah? God, I love gamification.
Leaderboards is great, and we're doing what you're doing, but only with, but not in focus groups or tests like that. We let the data speak. We just take it out very early and see if it sticks. Kind of the data doesn't lie.
Awesome. We had a question down at the end here.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to the discussion about kids knowing more than teachers and also tablets in classrooms, because in our experience, I spoke at ISTE 3 years ago, and I was in a room full of 80 educators who said, they bought these things for our classroom, what the hell do I do with it? And that hasn't changed a huge amount. And recently, one of the preschools that uses our stuff said, well, what can you do to get more teachers to use these tablets? And we asked them, what are all the things that your teachers are having problems with? And then we picked something that would make their life easier without adding a lot more stuff, where they could hand kids the tablet and they could do something. And I just wondered what your experience is and whether things are actually moving to make this easier, or it's still as hard as it was 3 years ago.
For those up in the back, she asked about tablets, kind of a teacher versus tablet, and a teacher as the best friend of tablet, how to make that easier. Go for it.
Well, first of all, it's a funding problem, and then a lot of times districts will say, we're getting the hardware, and very minimal or not even any budget in there for training and for software. I really like what Amplify is doing and thinking much whole classroom context about not just dropping off the hardware, thinking about how it loops into the entire assessment and really changing, fundamentally how a teacher does their job. But that's kind of the ed tech pioneers, like you talked before. Like, there's always going to be those teachers that are super active and are going to go out and find the best resources and put it together in their own lesson plan. And to actually scale it, it needs to be, more intuitive, more, unified, and a lot of that is just I want to be able to hand it to a kid and have them, know that they're going to be learning something, they're going to be engaged because I really want to work with this small group over here, tutoring them on something or working individually. So that's, I think, the challenge is involving the teachers in a way that really fits into the high-level goals of what they're trying to do of assessment, but doesn't require them to be there all the time, and still can kind of be able to just give it off to the kids. If that answers your question.
Is it changing in your mind?
Is it changing? Yeah.
Now there's lots more tablets there, but are teachers really using them yet?
Some are, yeah.
I think the other part of it that I would just add is that I think it's really age driven. So you mentioned preschool, so I'm not sure what your age. Okay, so I think that's actually a really important distinction, is that when you are dealing with 12 and under, the teacher has a stronger voice than the kids in some instances, not always. But then when you hit, I think it's 9 or 10, when you hit that 9 and 10 and over and the kids start having a stronger voice, those teachers are much more active in ensuring that they're using tools and technology to engage their kids. So I just think you need a lot more support for the teachers of 9 and 10 and under.
I look at eSpark. They're doing a great job of teaching districts on how to actually incorporate iPads into their program and have a whole loop for teachers to get a playlist, give it to the kids, get feedback on how they're doing, and really not just kind of drop off the hardware.
And that's some of our professional development. We've got webinars, self-paced workshops, professional development series, all on our Adobe Education Exchange. And one of the things I do is I go out and visit teachers and talk to administrators and state education leaders, and then I come back to my team and say, okay, well, here are the gaps. Here's what it is that is keeping what we think. This is our best guess as to what we think is keeping teachers from, engaging with this software in the classroom, and then we start making resources to close that gap as we can. We're in a position to be able to offer that for free, but we're just really trying to say there's so few excuses. It shouldn't be about experience or knowledge or whatever, because we can provide that for you this way.
I want to add a side note for that. That I think it's a huge opportunity, because what it means for a company like ours, for example, if I can position myself as someone that can help music teachers understand what they can do with their iPads in their music lessons, it's a jackpot, right? I go to these conferences and you see talks about what to do, best apps for this and that, and it's a full room much bigger than this one, right? Hundreds of teachers waiting in the hall room to get in just to understand what they're going to do. So it's a big opportunity that you can use.
That does my heart proud. I love that fact. I think that's fantastic. I wish there were more opportunities across the states for that.
You can create webinars. You can do stuff. So if they're afraid of it, this fear or this lack of knowledge is an opportunity for you to stand out.
Scott, you had a question?
Yes. I'm sorry to take a step back here where you were talking about leaderboards. I've noticed, I'm curious if you've seen this, say middle school kids, leaderboards are a great mechanic to engage boys who want to be competitive. One might argue it's not such a great mechanic for drawing in girls. Are you seeing similar things, or maybe in different ages, similar experience?
Yes.
Yeah.
Leaderboards are boys tend in our data. Boys are much more competitive than girls. Girls are much more attracted to the kind of play along, play with friends, not against friends. So you need to have kind of dueling dynamics that attract. We have leaderboards and we have competitions built in, but we're seeing more girls in our apps and boys.
Do you do you make those who show up on the leaderboard anonymous? Like, or through a nickname that couldn't be recognized?
Anonymous nickname.
Yeah. Okay.
So you're practically happy that you see yourself, but you don't know who the other is.
Gotcha.
I think gender in general is a great question. How do you guys see the gender breakdown for your apps, and how do you find yourself marketing towards, more of a universal, or do you find that you tend to lean more boy or girl?
Yeah, I think I was just going to comment on, kind of the question of leaderboards as well. That if you think of the SimCity game, it's a very gender unneutral game. So I think that the key here is that when you're creating your game, you're creating game mechanics that are offering gender invites across the board. So leaderboards definitely more boy oriented. Social gaming perhaps more girl oriented. So how do you actually make sure that the mechanics are drawing in the most amount of users possible?
We have, I think, just a few more minutes left. Go ahead.
Hi, Yuval, you had mentioned you would be interested in working with music teachers, right? I don't know if you're aware, but many programs across, I know California, I'm not sure, totally across the country, have canceled their music programs. And so,
go for schools.
Music and art. So I'm just wondering, for both you, Laura, as well, do you have any plans to, or interest in somehow trying to revive the A in STEAM, the STEAM initiative, in the public school system, so that you can have that opportunity?
Honestly, I think we're a little. If I got your question right, I think it's. I'm too small and too far away to make a difference in the U.S. public school system. And its decisions. But again, this is also an opportunity because it means that for me, I can offer really affordable, cheap ways to keep up that music education alive. Your school program was canceled, but why not, get these music skills going at home in an after class and so on to keep it. And also as a distribution channel, if I can give schools stuff for free related to music, they'll find the time to use it, and it's not costing them anything. So it's another opportunity for me, a bottom-up approach.
I'm going to open up to questions here in a second, but my last question for you guys is, what is your...
That, by the way, is the worst, is just a really bad loop in educational technology that we have to be aware of. I'm not saying you're causing it in any way, but school funding drops down, great opportunity for tech entrepreneurs to come in and say, we have a cheaper solution. We have to find a way to be supporting public school education as we find ways to supplement it and replace certain roles that teachers have, because that's a very, I think, valid criticism of the entire ed tech movement, is how it syncs up with efforts to really kill public school funding in this country.
I love that. I love that you jumped in too. I was like, oh. I like passion.
It's an opportunity for all of us, but we shouldn't be working toward that.
Right. Exactly right. So actually, along those lines, you guys, you all have your own tenure. What problems have you experienced along the way that you would like to share some insights on your experience, whether it be in the classroom looking at new innovative tech dealing with teachers, or in your actual operations or creation of your app that might be beneficial to the audience here that's in the process of experiencing it themselves? AKA spotlight on you.
I'm not sure how much I'm supposed to say about this, first of all, but I'll say it anyway. I think one of the challenges one of the things that my team is thinking a lot about is, there's been this proliferation of iPads and Chromebooks and everything, which I'm really excited about. At the same time, those devices aren't great for our software because we are industry standard software. We need We require a certain operating system and a certain amount of memory, etc. We are developing iPad apps, but we've got Photoshop Touch, but it's good. I've got some great 3rd and 4th grade music videos that are coming out of it, but I think there's a lot more. So we're working pretty quickly around that, but it's not here today, basically. And yeah, I'll just say that. Yeah.
That's a good one.
I mean, I think the biggest challenge always comes down to distribution in this industry. I mean, it is just totally broken. So, I think the call that I would have is, although we all feel like, okay, this tablet store could solve it, it's not a sustainable business model for us given the price points and what we're looking at. So how do we continue to try and disrupt this distribution channel so that it becomes much easier for us to get great products to scale in the market? And so how we're solving it right now is we're talking to 60 different distribution partners about trying to get our products into the market, and that's crazy. I mean, it's just unbelievable, the challenges that we have.
I think saying it out loud to a group of people who agree with you and probably can help escalate it with their own networks is also part of the solution. So start talking about that one. Because I agree, getting it to market is huge. You already have advertising laws that you're curbed by, and on top of that, you have a in some way saturated market with very little scope. So, Jacob, did you have anything?
Well, yeah, just distribution is absolutely the #1 challenge. On top of that, I think the downside of really being in love with your subject matters is just falling in love with parts of your product. So I can definitely point back to parts of our product roadmap that we were just so in love with this feature, and was it really core to the game? Not really. It was just this little kind of side part that we just wanted to be so awesome. And so I think, especially the space that we're in, which is tablets, which is really the kind of casual game genre, you can't simplify it enough. Like our most popular game is MotionMath Hungry Fish. It's a game loop that like a 3-year-old can understand, right? A fish is hungry, feed it a number, now it's bigger. It's like, that's kind of the ideal I think we're going for, is that level of simplicity. And it's very easy to get thrown off course from that.
How about you, Yuval?
Yeah, so there are challenges also in distribution, and I think one of the things, it relates also to the App Store economics, which are very problematic when you're doing education. And on one hand, you're doing something which you believe in, it does good for the world, but all your other people fighting against you on the same attention span, same downloads, are the big boys that have a lot of money, that are up there in the top 10, also because they can buy users.
Having a TV channel doesn't hurt to get high on the App Store.
That doesn't hurt at all. Having tons of money, and part of it is how much, us education companies, how much can we charge for people? It's when it's not as addictive, right? It's people, for example, in-app purchases control what's going in the revenue model of the app stores, but it's frowned upon. We're using it, and we don't like it so much, and it's very frowned upon by parents. But then, if you then check what are these parents spending money on, they're spending a hell of a lot more money on in-app purchases of Candy Crush and Clash of Clans than they are on math or music or alphabet education apps. Much more, ridiculously more. So then, at the end of the day, it kind of brings you to the, you want to be better, and you want the App Store to be better. And I think people need to start spending money not only according to addictive natures of these apps, but and that's on the parents' side, which we can't control. But on our side, if you're playing with the big boys, you need to start, acting and treating yourself as one of them. So in terms of the stuff that you do, analytics, and how you measure engagement, all these things weren't mentioned today so far, but it's kind of our bread and butter. The DAO Mao, I don't know if the daily active versus monthly active, which is a measure of engagement, and the secondary retention, and all these stats, which are, we need to start thinking about lifetime value, average revenue per user, all these things, which are, what are the benchmarks for education? How do we get them higher? Maybe we should, do some alliance to help the education categories do better. That's kind of the things that I'm thinking about a lot.
You know, it's funny with clients. We have clients come in and we work with them in a variety of ways. What we tend to see, the ramp up is there's so much fervor about just getting your product out, and then for the first 6 months after you get your product out, the fervor is all, no one's looking at it, where's the advertising? And then it goes into, why aren't we in social media? Moms should be writing about us. And then it goes directly, it's like about 6-7 months after the product launches, well, all of a sudden the marketing person steps up and he's like, what's our CCU? Goes through the analytics and that's when it hits us. Is what proof of we need proof in the pudding. It's great that Jimmy just aced his test. Thumbs up for that one. But I want to know what the stats are that we can actually sustain this game moving forward, more than just happy PR stories. And because we all love those stories, and God knows I will talk about those stories all the time. But at the end of the day, your proof is in the numbers, and the numbers come from analytics, and that is what you have to educate yourself on. So, did anybody want to open it up? I think we have like 5 minutes. Tana disappeared on me. So, 2 minutes. All right, super fast questions. We can talk really fast. Go for it.
Okay, communicating a new idea to parents or teachers. So, like alternative assessment, or Jacob, your example of a game where math really is a tool to do something. When you're trying to communicate something that just is not that familiar, what do you find is successful? What gets through when you try to communicate like that?
Well, that's one reason we're actually focusing more on classrooms now, is that teachers understand the pedagogy of what we're doing a lot better than parents. I think, testimonials, anecdotes, making it visual, video stories of kids kind of having that success moment and reframing why it was successful. I think that's probably a lot more effective than like paragraphs of text. But that's a challenge. It's a very crowded marketplace. How do you show, how do you indicate quality? There's several, good companies obviously trying to be the arbiter of what really is successful, and yet most parents don't know about them. Most parents will say, God, it's so hard to find what's actually quality on the App Store. That's an ongoing challenge.
So I'm going to have to wrap it up. I have to thank these 4 geniuses. Thank you very much for putting up with my randomness. Actually, I suggest if you can really quick, come down and exchange cards with them. It's always good to make networks within networks. That's why I love these conferences. And they also have really good, I know there's more questions. It's a good opportunity to at least ping them and chat after the conference or between blocks. So thank you guys for being awesome and staying when it's warm and everything like that. So rock on. Thanks, guys.